The boundaryless world is here. A world where work is no longer defined by jobs. The workplace is no longer a specific place, and many workers are no longer traditional employees. As humans make their first experiences with and get used to this new reality, we asked what it will take for organizations and workers to thrive amidst uncertainty and continuous change. With the 2024 Global Human Capital Trends Report, we outline how a focus on the human factor is what will truly drive organizations forward. Based on the insights from over 14,000 people across 95 countries and interviews with executives from some of today's leading organizations, the yearly Global Human Capital Trends Report is one of the biggest publications on people strategy and has been so for the past 12 years. For the first time ever, we are presenting the thrilling insights of this new report for a European audience, and I'm happy to guide you through this breakfast launch event with my dear colleagues. Anna from Vienna, John from Warsaw, and Joan Pere from Barcelona. Additionally, we have the extraordinary opportunity to hear more from the co-authors themselves. Art Mazer, Jason Flynn, Sue Cantrell, David Mellon, and Nick Scoble-Williams as they share additional insights on the newest human capital trends. Art, what are the main themes of our new report?
The title of our 2024 Global Human Capital Trends Report is Thriving Beyond Boundaries: Human Performance in a Boundaryless World. And in it, we dive deep into uniquely human topics like purpose, trust, and curiosity, and how creating better human outcomes can lead to better business outcomes. Our research for the 2024 Global Human Capital Trends Report draws on insights from over 14,000 people across 95 countries and interviews with executives from some of today's leading organizations. Our research has revealed that a focus on the human factor is emerging as the bridge between knowing what shifts are shaping the future of work and doing things to make real progress against these trends, with many organizations being held back by the old mindsets, old operating constructs, and proxies of the past. In fact, those who are able to bridge this gap from knowing to doing on this year's trends are more likely to produce better business and human outcomes. This mutually reinforcing cycle of human and business outcomes is what we call human performance, because it's humans, more than physical assets, that truly drive organizations forward today. With human performance as the theme for this year's report, each trend provides a set of practical guidelines that will help unlock human performance and bridge the gap between knowing and doing.
Thriving Beyond Boundaries: Human Performance in a Boundaryless World is the title of this year's report. We will introduce a new concept of performance and will call it human performance, because it's time to not only reflect business outcomes when we think of performance. Adjacent to it, we should factor in improvements the workforce can benefit from. We will come back to this in more detail in an instant. The report illustrates how human performance in a boundaryless world looks like and delves deep into human sustainability, one of the core elements of human performance. It explores how organizations can drive performance, from the essential role of trust to unlocking human imagination in the age of generative AI. The report also explores how HR needs to change in order to rise to the challenges of orchestrating work in a boundaryless world. So, what are we waiting for? Let's hear from John in Warsaw, who will introduce the first trend of the 2024 Global Human Capital Trends Report.
Thank you, Maren. The wheel, the bicycle, the locomotive, the airplane, and even the rocket. These are tremendous examples of man's ability, thanks to his imagination and ingenuity, and the willingness to experiment to make our lives as humans even better. Technology that we have today was created by humans. And yet, for the first time ever, the pace of that change is beginning to have significant impact on all of us, no matter where we are in the world. The survey showed us, more than 14,000 of you, that ultimately we are more tech exhausted, we have more burnout, and most of us are afraid of what AI will do when it comes to our jobs. But the reality that we need to see today is the fact is, just like we used to think that ultimately the theater would disappear when we had motion pictures, we've all enjoyed the theater. Why? Because we recognize the fact is that ultimately as human beings, we have the ability to act and we have the ability to change. The challenge is for us to recognize that we need to do it now. So how can we combine the theater and the motion picture in this new world of work? Well, we call that human sustainability. It's the recognition that organizations have a purpose and a place in helping us all to be even more and better being human. How do we define human sustainability? Well, it's to the degree that an organization is actually helping people to be even more effective, but even enjoy being more human. That means that organizations are thinking about how to improve the mental health and the well-being of their employees, how to provide the skills that are important for today, but also are relevant and employable for those people in the future, to provide them good jobs, but also the opportunity for advancement, and at the same time, to provide something that is equitable between men and women. Even more importantly, in today's world, organizations need to recognize that people want to feel that their work means something and that they belong to an organization that ultimately is helping people to be even more human. Is that something too far into the future? Well, actually today, we believe that many organizations are experimenting with that. And Sue is going to share with you more details about what and how we can be truly human and sustainable.
A human sustainability agenda can help future-proof organizations, bolstering their ability to access, engage, and develop diverse workers, developing a strong, diverse pipeline of future talent, becoming more rewarding and productive places to work, inoculating against a variety of risks, and appealing to consumers. Our research suggests that human sustainability is becoming increasingly important. 79% of executives in our survey say that the organization has a responsibility to create value for workers as human beings, not just as employees, and for greater society. Interestingly, though, we found there's a disconnect between workers and executives. 89% of leaders we surveyed say they are advancing human sustainability. But interestingly, only 41% of workers agree with them. So there's some work to be done. So what do we do to advance human sustainability? Well, fundamentally, the organization needs to rethink the way it views its relationships with people. We should think about the following actions. First of all, measure human outcomes, not just business outcomes. So just to give an example, we saw one organization conduct an AI-driven analysis of how quickly people are learning new skills to let them thrive not only in their own organization, but to whatever organization they might end up with at the future. Make the business case for human sustainability, because as Jason said, human outcomes creates better business outcomes. Tie leader and manager rewards to human sustainability metrics. An example here is MasterCard. It determines bonuses for all workers, including leaders, in part based on the organization's performance, not only on carbon neutrality, but on financial inclusion and gender pay parity. Organizations advancing human sustainability also integrate the governance into the board and the C-suite. But they also involve the people that they work with in co-creating human sustainability initiatives. And probably most importantly, the manager is the nexus point, the place where human sustainability can really make a difference for every worker. So elevate managers' human sustainability role and empower them to own it.
Just as we saw that man was not content with just building a wheel, but ultimately creating a rocket. The reality is we need to redefine key elements of success in business, and one of those is productivity. In the old-fashioned way, productivity was based on inputs and outputs, which really started with the industrial age. At the same time, we see today that outcomes are really critical for success. But the question now is, which outcomes? Organizations today have been focusing on outcomes that matter to them. But what if we were able to capture what are the outcomes that matter to employees and those around the organization? Well, with AI and with new data techniques, we have the ability to be able to do that. And let me give you a concrete example. Yesterday, I had a conversation with an insurance agent because of the fact is that my car had hit another car. Immediately, the person understood that I was a foreigner and spoke slower to me in that language. Well, in the past, if the organization was measuring, they would see that that conversation took a bit longer. However, they would also have measured my client satisfaction, which would be off of the chart. The challenge is that's what the organization would be measuring. But what if we were also able to measure the employee? How well did he or she feel that that conversation was meaningful to her? How well did she feel that she was using her skills to be able to help that customer? And was there something in that conversation that was memorable that she could share with others? That is called human performance, and that is the power of true productivity. So we need to redefine basically productivity, recognizing it's a co-creation between workers and the employer themselves. And Sue will share in more detail about human performance and how we look at productivity in the future.
So if traditional productivity metrics are becoming less relevant, what should we be measuring? The new math is what we call human performance. What is it? It's a balance of business outcomes, things like quality or results of the work, and human outcomes or human sustainability. And what happens is we create shared, mutually reinforcing outcomes for both the organization and the worker. Now, the appropriate set of metrics will vary by workforce, by industry. It's more nuanced and sophisticated than standard productivity metrics. So think of this in terms of best fit rather than best practice. A few data points from our research. 53% of respondents to our surveys agreed that their organization is in the very early phases of the journey to identify better ways to measure worker performance and value beyond traditional productivity. So we're on our way, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Interestingly, though, only 17% of respondents say their organization is very or extremely effective at evaluating the value created by individual workers beyond tracking activities or outputs and inputs. Up until now, we couldn't really measure human performance well, is the reality, but it's new technologies and new sources of data that have opened up the horizons to be able to get us a far more nuanced and sophisticated view of worker performance. Interestingly, both workers and leaders share similar perspectives on the positive impact of new sources of data and technology. Data generated as workers work real time. They told us that new sources of data is unlocking value for both the organization, things like business growth and strategy, but also for the worker, things like worker satisfaction and career development. Trust is a critical component of making this new equation work. If we're going to take new sources of data and technology to better measure human performance, we have to have this element of trust in the equation. So interestingly, a predictive outcomes analysis based on our research and quantified organization suggests that trust in an organization's approach to data management raises the probability of improved business growth by roughly 50%. How do you achieve trust? It's through responsible use of technology and data that enables us to now measure human performance.
I'll hand over now to my dear colleague in Barcelona, Jean-Pierre Salom, to elaborate on the paradoxes, deficits, and most important, on imagination.
Thank you very much, John. We will deep dive now on the surprising relationship between trust and transparency. We call it the transparency paradox. Transparency is commonly thought to drive trust, but as we think about building trust between the workers and the organization, the relationship between trust and transparency is much more complicated and nuanced. Some organizations are discovering that mishandling transparency can severely undermine trust. Rather, organizations should use transparency in ways to foster human performance, focusing on having a continuous dialogue in order to promote trust. With evolving challenges and disruptions, work for trust may be even more important than employee engagement when it comes to navigating the relationship between the worker and the organization. David, what do our findings show on the interference between transparency and trust?
Our survey data speaks to the challenge here. 86% of leaders say that being more transparent or having more transparency is going to lead to greater workforce trust. In other words, most believe that conventional wisdom. So there may be a blind spot there. And yet only 13% of all respondents said that organizations are leading or addressing trust and transparency between themselves and workers. So what do we do about it? As you'll see in the report, organizations do have some work to do, and we suggest a few actions. First and foremost, just talk about trust. To build trust, organizations and workers need an ongoing dialogue that gives each party reason to believe that the other one is looking out for its best interests, including where and how things might be more or less transparent. Organizations and workers should have that dialogue about what to share, why is it valuable to provide it, who's going to use it, how it will be delivered, how it will be evaluated, and so on. This allows both sides to better recognize and understand the nuanced relationship between trust and transparency. Additionally, having these conversations between leaders and workers about what and why information shared, to whom, how, and so on, is itself a first good step towards building trust. And we have an example of that in the report. One global software company has an online forum where workers can just talk about the kinds of data that's being shared, organizational policies, and related business decisions.
Super inspiring, David. Thank you very much. And now we move from paradox to deficit. Our next trend is called the imagination deficit. Generative AI and other technologies have the potential to expose an imagination deficit. Organizations are recognizing the importance of ensuring human capabilities keep pace with technological progress, but have yet to address it. The more AI-enabled work becomes, the more important human imagination becomes, and scaling human capabilities like curiosity and empathy can create value for organizations and workers. Opportunities are arising to drive human performance, outcomes that benefit organizations, workers, and society. And these opportunities are putting a renewed premium on human capabilities, in particular, empathy and curiosity. David, can you jumpstart my imagination? What needs to be done to harness human capabilities in service of imagination?
What can organizations do? Well, first off, they just need to be mindful of the critical importance of these enduring human capabilities. New technologies are becoming better at replicating the functional and technical aspects of work. And what's left behind, the points of differentiation, are going to come from what the humans do, not the technology. To harness human capabilities in service of imagination, both the organization and the worker have important roles to play here. As a first step, we should just assess where we're at. How are we as an organization at curiosity and empathy and the like? And how do we embed growing those at scale into our overall workforce strategies? Organizations can help cultivate these capabilities by providing workers with tools and safe spaces to experiment, explore, and envision possible futures. For example, one global retailer implemented an AI bot in its call center to handle routine customer questions. But rather than just stopping there, meeting basic needs and using as a chance to cut labor costs, they then invested in a comprehensive upskilling initiative for those same call center workers to strengthen the ability of those workers to leverage those human capabilities to drive higher order values for customers and for themselves. Workers need to grow and practice and deploy these capabilities if they're going to imagine how tools like AI are going to be part of their work lives going forward. And organizations need to encourage that imagination in safe spaces.
I am very excited to pass over to Vienna now. Anna Noshat, please explain us what a digital playground is for.
Indeed, this trend is called digital playgrounds, but it's not what you might think. A digital playground is not a singular place nor a virtual platform. It's a mindset. We all know that technological advancements have the potential to completely reshuffle our world of work. They have the potential to elevate organizational performance and lift human potential. Psychological safety, trust, trial and error, and simply the joy of playing around are essential for developing new ideas. Similar to how we see that technology impacts the need to cultivate human capabilities, we also see a need for employees to have a safe space to co-create their futures with the organization. Digital playgrounds are safe spaces that encourage intentional play and curiosity and allow people to experiment and explore new ways of working. This does not only benefit the organization, but it helps to build trust and confidence, and it allows workers to build new skills on the way. This trend is about curating technology with the intention and the opportunity to use them in a playful way. Nick, can you tell us more about digital playgrounds? How do you define them?
Now, digital playgrounds are not just one singular place. It's not just a virtual platform. These are a mindset, an approach where we are curating technologies, where we are creating opportunities to engage, to interact, to simulate with the technologies, to reimagine the future and to democratize those opportunities to engage with the technology for all. Now, interestingly, 82% of workers in our research said they believe it's really important for their organization to help them to reimagine the way that their job may change in the future. But less than half, only 43%, said that the organization is in fact helping them do that today. We also heard less than 10% of our respondents say that they believe their organization is making great efforts towards really embracing this notion of reimagining workforces, workplaces through the technology, the techno tools, things like AI, digital footprints, VR, advanced analytics, all of these tools and technologies that are helping simulate, that are creating the opportunity for play and experimentation. But there are things that every organization could and should be thinking about and acting on today. First and foremost is recognizing that a digital playground is about the mindset, the strategies to reimagine, to explore those scenarios. Importantly also is to realize this doesn't have to be overly complicated. All organizations have technologies, tools that they are using today. So really being deliberate about how do we actually create the opportunities for workers to engage with all of the technologies, tools that are available today, to create the psychological safety, to encourage the play, the experimentation.
We are convinced that one size fits all does not work when it comes to organizational culture. Instead, we need to foster microcultures in a workplace. Most organizations assume that having one single corporate culture where all the employees fits in is important to success. But rarely culture plays out that way. Workers join unique teams with unique cultures in specific parts of the organization. Failing to embrace these microcultures, so failing to embrace a culture of cultures, may lead to a misalignment between leaders and employees, and it may hinder human performance. So being authentic about microcultures and specific team cultures right from the start is important to attract the right talent and enable human sustainability. Nick, can you tell us more about workplace microcultures and how to harness their power?
Now, here we are talking about the way in which a monolithic view of culture, one size, one type, right across the organization, is no longer fit for purpose in today's world of work that needs to be designed around speed, agility, diversity, and constant change. Organizations need to be enabling a culture of cultures that really tailors to individual, team, functions, work groups, geographical needs, while still aligning with a global set of values. Now, the value, the impact of microcultures is clear. Organizations embracing microcultures 1.8 times more likely to create those positive human outcomes and 1.6 times more likely to achieve those elevated desired business outcomes.
Let's return to my colleague Maren Hauptmann. Given all the demands of the boundaryless world, how should we envisage HR to meet these challenges?
Thank you, Anna. The next trend calls for a shift in the way we think about HR as a whole discipline. To meet the demands for an increasingly boundaryless world, human resources itself should become boundaryless. Human resources should shift from a specialized function that owns most workforce responsibility to a boundaryless discipline. People expertise, the knowledge and understanding of how to develop, motivate, and deploy workers to achieve business outcomes and human outcomes throughout the talent lifecycle, isn't solely owned by HR any longer, but it becomes a responsibility and capability of all. But what exactly is a boundaryless HR function? Surely it must be more than a mere change in terminology. And how do we move towards boundaryless HR? Let's hear more from Jason.
Our research this year shows that HR really must evolve from a siloed function to a boundaryless discipline that's integrated with the people and businesses it serves. This is what we call boundaryless HR. This involves breaking down boundaries between HR and other disciplines, boundaries between HR, workers, leaders, and managers, and breaking down boundaries that equate the notion of jobs to work and employees to workers. So getting back to breaking down some of that old thinking that's holding us back. By adopting this mindset of boundaryless HR, organizations can develop people enablement and leadership expertise and weave it throughout the fabric of the business. This is going to help drive multidisciplinary solutions to complex problems that every organization is facing today. When HR becomes boundaryless, HR professionals act more like orchestrators, coaches, and co-creators rather than traditional employment managers. So really what we found here is there's a mindset shift and a new way of operating that HR has to embrace as they look forward. So why is this so important? What did our data tell us? First of all, according to our research this year, only 15% of executives strongly agree that their organization values the work performed by HR, a stunning statistic. And yet 72% of the respondents that we heard from agreed that HR shifting from an operations function to a discipline that operates across functions to really orchestrate the future of work is critically important. And nearly 1/3 of C-suite leaders say this shift is one of the top 3 most difficult challenges they face as they look ahead. So clearly this won't be easy, but there are some clear actions that we've seen that have emerged for HR and the rest of the organization to focus on. First, I think it's important to realize that HR is not alone in this focus on becoming boundaryless. IT, finance, and other functions are increasingly integrated into the business, to drive agility, innovation, and human sustainability in a world that just continues to change at such a rapid pace. And like other functions, HR needs to become more integrated and look at roles, processes, and teams across and throughout the organization to connect dots and better orchestrate work across these disciplines. Take, for example, a large life sciences company that really worked on integrating the worker and patient experience by introducing a new chief patient and employee experience officer. So we're seeing real opportunities emerge for HR to become involved and help facilitate the transition and emergence of some of these new roles that really embrace the idea of bringing people expertise, the human outcomes, and really tying them to how do we drive the business outcomes that are so important.
Along all the different human capital trends we've explored today, there is one focal point. Human outcomes and human capabilities are the key drivers behind innovation and organizational growth. Therefore, the human contribution should be the top priority on any C-level agenda, and hence the focus of the leadership team. It is today's leaders' responsibility to anchor human performance and human sustainability in the organization, leveraging the concepts we have elaborated on throughout this report. Leaders should create the mindset of digital playground. It is a leadership responsibility to give way to workforce microcultures, and it is understood that shifting organizational mindsets can be just as difficult as making the operational adjustments needed to support a new way of thinking and working. Guiding principles how to blend performance with a human approach will be the major cornerstone of any future leadership strategy, enabling today's organizations to thrive in tomorrow's boundaryless world. Yet, there is one additional area that provides leaders an opportunity to help their organizations create new paradigms geared toward human performance: fostering psychological safety for their teams. Psychological safety is the foundation to establish trust within the organization. This gives leeway for human performance and human sustainability. Leaders that fail to act on these issues may put their organization's progress toward achieving human performance at risk. During our event, we outlined the new trends in human capital for you. I sincerely enjoyed hearing the different perspectives from all over the globe, highlighting the Deloitte perspective on the future of the workforce. Our position is clear. We need to humanize performance, and leaders have to seamlessly integrate a human perspective with latest technological developments. We are excited to share this year's Global Human Capital Trends report with you, and we hope you'll join us on the journey toward unlocking human performance in a boundaryless world.
Wir freuen uns, den diesjährigen Human Capital Trends Report mit Ihnen zu teilen. Begleiten Sie uns auf dem Weg, Human Performance in einer entgrenzten Welt neu zu definieren.
Estamos muy ilusionados por poder compartir un año más nuestro informe global de tendencias de capital humano. Y esperamos que os unáis a nosotros para seguir impulsando el prosperar juntos, poniendo lo humano en el centro.
Cieszymy się, że możemy podzielić się z Państwem tegorocznym raportem o globalnych trendach w kapitale ludzkim. I mam nadzieję, że dołączycie Państwo do nas podróż w kierunku odblokowania ludzkiej wydajności w świecie bez granic.